Family drove 53 miles in 104-degree heat for a meal nobody wanted. The date was July 12, 1961, in Coleman, Texas, a town so small it barely registered on the map. The air hung thick and heavy, like a wet wool blanket draped over the world, the kind of heat that made your lungs feel sticky, your skin prickle, every breath an effort. The family's 1,958 Buick Special sat baking in the driveway, its black vinyl seats already radiating warmth like a skillet left too long on the stove. Inside the house, Harvey sat at a card table with his wife, his mother-in-law, and his father-in-law. The air conditioning had given up hours ago, surrendering to the Texas summer with a defeated hum before falling silent. A box fan in the corner oscillated lazily, pushing around air that felt more like a sigh than a breeze. They were playing dominoes not because they were particularly enjoying it, but because it was something to do. Then, out of nowhere, Jerry's father-in-law set down his domino with a soft click and said, "You know, I've been thinking, we could drive to Abilene for lunch. That cafeteria there has decent pie." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. 53 miles, 104 degrees, a car with no working AC. It was, by any reasonable measure, a terrible idea, and yet no one said that. Jerry's first thought was, this is insane. He could already picture it, the long, sun-baked stretch of highway, the way the heat would shimmer off the asphalt like a mirage. He glanced at his wife. She met his eyes for a fraction of a second, just long enough to confirm what he already knew. She didn't want to go either, but then she looked away, her fingers tightening around her domino. His mother-in-law, usually the voice of reason, sighed and said, "I suppose it would be nice to get out of the house." A lie. She'd been complaining about the heat all morning. But the words were out now, and the momentum had shifted. Jerry's father-in-law, who'd made the suggestion in the first place, later admitted he'd only said it because he thought they wanted to go. And just like that, the decision was made. Within minutes, they were in the car. The windows were rolled down, but the air that rushed in was like the blast from an oven. Sweat beaded on Jerry's forehead almost immediately, trickling down his temples in slow, itchy rivulets. No one spoke. The radio was off. The only sound was the hum of the tires on the road and the occasional creak of the Buick's suspension. When they finally arrived in Abilene, the cafeteria was exactly as Jerry had imagined, crowded, noisy, and stifling. The line for food snaked through the room, and by the time they reached the counter, the choices looked unappetizing at best. The fried chicken was dry, the mashed potatoes gluey, the green beans overcooked to the point of mush, and the pie, the crust was tough, the filling bland. They ate in silence, forks scraping against plates, each bite a reminder of the heat, the drive, the growing sense of regret. The ride home was worse. The sun was lower now, but the heat hadn't relented. If anything, it felt heavier, more oppressive. The Buick's engine groaned as it climbed the gentle inclines of the West Texas plains. Jerry's shirt was damp with sweat, clinging to his back. His father-in-law gripped the steering wheel with white-knuckled intensity, his jaw set. No one made eye contact. When they finally pulled into the driveway, the relief was palpable. They stumbled out of the car like survivors of a shipwreck, blinking in the late afternoon light. The house was just as they'd left it, hot, still lifeless. They collapsed into chairs, too exhausted to even speak. And then, almost by accident, the truth came tumbling out. "I didn't want to go," Jerry's wife admitted, her voice quiet. "I thought you all did." "Same," his mother-in-law said, shaking her head. "I was just trying to be agreeable." Jerry's father-in-law let out a bitter laugh. "I only suggested it because I thought you wanted to go." A beat of silence. Then, all at once, they started talking, overlapping, interrupting, voices rising in a mix of frustration and relief. They'd all assumed the others were on board. They'd all gone along, not because they wanted to, but because they thought they were the only ones who didn't. And in the end, they'd wasted an entire afternoon driving, sweating, eating mediocre food, all for a meal no one had actually wanted. That trip to Berlin became a legend in psychology, not because it was unusual, but because it wasn't. It happens everywhere, in boardrooms where executives nod along to a strategy no one believes in classrooms where students agree to a project no one has the energy for, in family kitchens where everyone pretends to be excited about a plan no one actually likes. It's the quiet, creeping force of groupthink, the invisible pressure to conform, even when conformity leads to misery. You've probably been there. Maybe it was a work meeting where someone proposed a new initiative and everyone around the table nodded, even though you could see the doubt in their eyes. Maybe it was a group chat where someone suggested dinner at a restaurant no one actually enjoys, but no one spoke up because they didn't want to be the one to ruin the vibe. Here's why it happens. Your brain is wired to avoid conflict, not the loud, dramatic kind, but the quiet, social kind. Kind where you're the only one who says, "Wait, does this actually make sense?" The kind where you risk being labeled as difficult or uncooperative, or worst of all, not a team player. So you swallow your objections, you nod, you go along, even when every instinct is screaming that it's a bad idea, and the bigger the group, the stronger the effect. In a study from the University of Virginia, researchers found that people were twice as likely to go along with a bad idea in a group of 4 than they were alone. Twice as likely to waste time, money, energy just to avoid the discomfort of speaking up. But here's the kicker. The Abilene paradox isn't just about bad decisions. It's about silent bad decisions. Kind where no one even realizes they're making one, because everyone assumes they're the only one who disagrees. Everyone assumes that if they don't speak up, it's because they're the outlier. The odd one out, the problem. Imagine this. You're in a work meeting. Someone suggests a new project. It's a terrible idea, you can see the flaws instantly. The timeline is unrealistic. The budget is non-existent, but no one says anything. You glance around, trying to gauge the reactions of your colleagues. Do they see what you see? You hesitate. You don't want to be the one to derail the momentum, so you nod, and just like that, the group commits to something no one actually believes in. Or picture this. A friend suggests a movie. You hate the genre. The thought of sitting through 2 hours of it makes your stomach twist, but you don't want to be the one to ruin the plan.